Hi, my creative third grade artists. Today we are talking about a new topic called texture. And texture is what you can feel with your fingers. I have in front of me a few examples of very different textures. This feather is pretty soft as I feel it and pulls apart when I move all the different segments of the feather. But also it has a hard plasticky center part, so it kind of has two textures to it. Here I have some cotton, which is really soft and fluffy. It also feels very light in my hand. When I set it down, it looks so different than the other materials because it looks so light, like a cloud. Here I also have two different textures. One is a woven piece of burlap. And if I close my eyes and run my finger over the top of the fabric, I can feel the small bumps of where the fabric comes in and out. I also have my strings hanging, which create that stringy texture to it. My rock, very heavy, but bumpy and rough when I run my hand over the top of it. Sandpaper is a great texture to feel. It's rough like a cat's tongue. Its roughness serves us a purpose to help us sand things and make them smooth. Lastly, I have a piece of aluminum, which is very shiny and extremely smooth, which gives it that mirrored look. Today, during class, at different points, I will let you come up and feel with your fingers the different textures that are on these materials. But first, we are going to be planning to create our own texture today. We are going to be using that foil to create our own embossed texture. Embossing is when you press into metal or other materials to create a raised or lowered surface. So we are going to be creating our own square of texture using the metal foil. But first, we are going to do something that all artists do, which is plan. Just like in your writing workshops, you plan what you're going to write in your story before you begin. So I would like for you to first write your name, class, and number, and then start planning some different shapes, patterns, lines, textures that you can think of in these squares. On my foil sheet, I've included tons of different textures and patterns and lines to create a lot of variation. I can create jagged and sharp texture. I can create really wavy and bumpy texture. I can create hairy texture like a dog's coat. In this square, I have provided for you a big square, which is the same size as your foil. And this square is not mandatory. You do not have to do this square. But if you feel more confident doing a large size of your pattern here in this square, what you can do is cut it out and use it on top of your foil. And I will show you how that is done. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a squiggly line. And then I'm going to use my scissors to cut out my template. Now that I have my square cut out, the next thing I'm going to do is take my aluminum sheet that I will give you, and you are going to tape it on top of the sheet. I put a piece of tape on the top and another piece of tape on the bottom. Nice and small so you can pull them off later. Next, with my aluminum sheet on the back, I'm going to take the piece of foam that I have given you at your table and lay that on top of the foam. I will then take a pencil that is not sharpened. Notice how it is not very pointy on top. It is rounded off. And I will show you why in just a moment. I can now press onto those lines or trace them again to get the exact pattern below. Once I have made my pattern, I'm always welcome to pull my sheet back and continue the embossing process by pressing into my sheet again and again, going over my lines back and forth. Now, boys and girls, you will see that on the opposite side, I have a raised surface where my line has pressed into my foil. This is the side that we really want to pay attention to and feel. Boys and girls, if you choose not to use your template to trace on, you're always welcome to start drawing right on your foil, if you feel confident enough for that. I'm going to create a dotted texture. And I always start by pressing light, then going back over it medium, and then pressing one more time nice and hard pressure onto my foil. Because if I go into it pressing really hard right away, I may accidentally break my foil and it will go through to the other side. That's also the reason why we do not want to use a super sharp pencil, because we don't want it to go through our foil. Now, one more thing, boys and girls, is as you are working, your foil may start to curl up. That is no big deal, because later we are going to uncurl your foil to make it flat. With all the working that I did on my foil, I was still able to make sure that it stayed flat at the very end after I was finished. Don't worry so much if it starts to curl on you. Okay, boys and girls, so again, you are going to start first with your planning. Make sure to write your name, class, and number. Once I see that you're confident with your planning, then I'd be happy to give you your aluminum sheet to get started with. Okay, boys and girls, please head to your tables and we can get started.